Not a huge skull because this is a young person.
The volume of the skull is 1,500 cubic centimeters.
Some discoveries are too dangerous for the world to know. In Peru, 3,000-year-old skulls were unearthed that defy explanation. Their DNA carries markers never seen before in any human population, and experts are scrambling to make sense of it. Could this be evidence that the history we've been taught is a lie? Beneath the desert sands, the Paracas tombs held hundreds of skulls, each one more baffling than the last. At first glance, the elongation is striking, almost exaggerated, stretching the cranium far beyond normal human proportions. But the real mystery lies beneath the surface. The foramen magnum, the hole at the base of the skull where the spinal cord passes, sits further back than in typical humans, a structural difference that cannot be explained by head binding alone. And while some scholars initially dismissed the elongation as cultural deformation, closer examination revealed something far more perplexing. Many skulls lacked the sagittal suture entirely. This connective tissue normally separates the parietal bones, fusing during childhood, but in these skulls it appears to have never existed. Then came the most unsettling measurements. Some skulls were reported to be up to 25% larger in volume and 60% heavier than a normal human skull. Artificial cranial deformation can alter shape, yes, but it cannot increase mass or cranial capacity. Scientists were staring at a biological puzzle that didn't fit any known pattern. CT scans revealed uniform internal bone structures, unusually dense and robust, almost as if the skull had naturally grown into its elongated form rather than being forced externally. Every detail, the weight, the size, the sutures, was consistent across the elite class buried in these tombs. And just when researchers thought they had reached the limits of mystery, another discovery added a chilling layer. Some skulls carried subtler anomalies, the kind that hinted at a hidden genetic code waiting to be uncovered. The question that haunted everyone remained: were these skulls shaped by ritual, or were these people born fundamentally different from us? For decades, scholars tried to explain these skulls with a simple answer: head binding. Infants in the Paracas culture were wrapped tightly, elongating their skulls as a status symbol. But the more scientists studied the bones, the more this explanation began to unravel. The cranial volume alone made experts pause. 25% larger than normal? 60% heavier? Head binding could never account for such dramatic increases. Even rare birth defects like craniosynostosis appear sporadically, but here the anomalies were consistent across an entire elite population. Statistically, it should have been impossible. Then there was the internal bone structure. Modern CT scans revealed an unusually uniform density, as if the skulls had grown naturally into these elongated forms. The sutures were missing, the mass excessive, the proportions inconsistent with any known human growth patterns. Every test, every measurement screamed one thing: something about these people defied fundamental biology. Even more troubling, each anomaly was repeated across multiple tombs, multiple generations. This wasn't an accident, it wasn't a random mutation, and it wasn't cultural shaping alone. Something deeper, something inherent was at play. At this point, mainstream explanations no longer sufficed. Researchers began whispering a chilling thought. What if these individuals were not just culturally different, but genetically extraordinary? A branch of humanity unlike anything we've seen. And just as the debate reached fever pitch, scientists turned to the one tool that never lies: the DNA. What it revealed next would shock the world. After years of careful excavation and analysis, researchers finally had what they needed: samples of bone, teeth, hair, and even preserved skin from the Paracas skulls. Each fragment was treated like a priceless relic. Ancient DNA is fragile, and a single contaminating cell could ruin the results. Scientists worked in sterile labs, wearing full protective gear as if handling a crime scene. The goal was clear: uncover the genetic story of these elite individuals. Mitochondrial DNA, passed exclusively from mother to child, promised to reveal maternal lineages across millennia. It was a tool so precise that it could trace ancestry back thousands of years. This was the one thing that never lies, the code written into every cell of life itself. Weeks passed. Laboratories across the United States ran parallel tests to ensure accuracy. Expectations were simple. The DNA would match known Native American haplogroups, linking these individuals to the broader populations of South America. Instead, what came back was baffling. Mutations appeared that had never been recorded in human or even primate DNA. Certain genetic markers, haplogroups, pointed not to the Americas, but to regions thousands of miles away: Europe, the Middle East, the Caucasus, even Mesopotamia. These were signatures that should not have existed in Peru 3,000 years ago. Scientists stared into belief at the results. The codes did not just fail to match, they contradicted everything known about migration and human history. And yet, this was only the beginning. The DNA was whispering a story far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The DNA results did more than surprise scientists. They shattered their expectations. Instead of confirming ties to local Native American tribes, the Paracas elite carried genetic markers never before seen in the Americas. Some haplogroups traced back thousands of miles to Europe, the Middle East, and the Caucasus, regions that should have had no contact with Peru 3,000 years ago. It wasn't just the geographical anomaly that stunned researchers. The mutations themselves were unique, never documented in human or even primate DNA. Experts struggled to interpret the data, with one lab director reportedly admitting, "I don't even know what I'm looking at." The implications were profound. If accurate, these findings suggested that the Paracas people were not only biologically distinct from their neighbors, but may have descended from populations that somehow crossed oceans or continents long before any known transoceanic travel. Every detail reinforced the mystery: the elongated skulls, the missing sutures, the heavier, denser cranial structures, all now paired with DNA that refused to fit any conventional map of human migration. The Paracas were no ordinary civilization. And yet, as shocking as these results were, they only opened a deeper question. If these people were genetically exceptional, where did they come from, and how did they carry knowledge and cultural practices that far outstripped their contemporaries? The story of the Paracas DNA wasn't just a puzzle, it was a threat to the conventional timeline of human history. And somewhere, hidden in the desert sands, the answers were waiting. The Paracas findings didn't just raise questions, they threatened to overturn everything historians thought they knew about the Americas. For centuries, textbooks traced the origins of South American civilizations to migrations across the Bering Land Bridge, with societies gradually developing in isolation. Yet these skulls and their DNA told a story that didn't fit that narrative at all. The anomalies suggested a civilization with knowledge, artistry, and genetics far beyond what should have existed in the region 3,000 years ago. Elaborate textiles, ceremonial obsidian blades, and gold ornaments demonstrated craftsmanship on par with some of the world's most advanced ancient cultures. And the people behind them weren't just local. They carried a genetic legacy that spanned continents. Every measure, every bone, every DNA fragment seemed to defy conventional timelines. Anthropologists were forced to ask uncomfortable questions. Could these people have had contact with Old World civilizations thousands of years before Columbus? Could knowledge, technology, and genetic lines have traveled across oceans unnoticed, shaping societies we thought had evolved independently?
Even mainstream scientists admitted that some of these results were baffling or impossible. The Paracas evidence didn't just add details to history, it shattered the framework of human migration, cultural development, and genetic lineage. And yet, the world rarely hears about these contradictions, because behind every shocking discovery lies another, more unsettling question. If the evidence challenges the timeline of civilization itself, who decides what we are allowed to know? The answer, or perhaps the cover-up, waited just beneath the surface, ready to pull us even deeper into mystery. Some researchers began to ask a bold, unsettling question. What if the Paracas were not just a local elite, but remnants of a far older global civilization? The DNA, the elongated skulls, and the advanced burial practices hinted at something far larger than a single culture in Peru. Proponents of diffusionism argue that civilizations did not arise in isolation. Instead, knowledge, technology, and even genetic lineages may have spread from a lost mother culture, a society so advanced it was erased from history by cataclysm. Some call it Atlantis, others refer to myths like Mu. According to these theories, survivors of such a civilization scattered across the globe, carrying their knowledge and distinct genes to new lands. In this framework, the Paracas elite were more than rulers. They were custodians of a forgotten wisdom, intentionally preserving the memory of a superior, sunken civilization. The elongation of their skulls may not have been purely ceremonial. Some theorists suggest it was a deliberate attempt to emulate the naturally elongated skulls of their godlike ancestors. Every textile, every astronomical observation, every ceremonial object could be seen as a living echo of an advanced, lost science. The story grows even stranger when considering the DNA anomalies, markers from Europe, the Middle East, and Mesopotamia appearing thousands of years before recorded contact. Could the Paracas be evidence that human history is far more interconnected and older than we have been taught? And yet, as these ideas spread, the academic world remains skeptical. But what if their skepticism is hiding something deeper? As the Paracas skulls and their DNA continued to baffle scientists, a more unsettling pattern emerged. Some researchers began alleging that evidence challenging the conventional timeline of human history was being suppressed or dismissed. Laboratories reported anomalies being questioned, papers delayed, and controversial findings quietly ignored. The more extraordinary the results, the stronger the pushback. Was it skepticism, caution, or something more deliberate? Some believe that mainstream institutions are protecting a version of history that cannot withstand these revelations. The idea that a lost global civilization might have existed, leaving traces in Peru, Europe, and the Middle East, was simply too explosive. And then there's the Paracas themselves, their elongated skulls, their advanced burial practices, their mysterious DNA. Did these traits mark them as custodians of a forbidden knowledge, a civilization erased from history whose secrets survived only in these elite bloodlines? Every answer seems to open more questions. How did their ancestors arrive in Peru thousands of years before recorded migrations? Were their skulls artificially shaped, or were they born with traits that defy human norms? And if these anomalies are true, how many other pieces of human history have been buried, hidden, or erased? For now, the Paracas remain an enigma. A chilling reminder that the past is not always what it seems, and somewhere in the desert sands, the secrets of these ancient people are still waiting to be uncovered.